The rain hammered against Marcus Chen's windshield as he navigated the dark country road, his 7-year-old daughter Emma asleep in the backseat. It was past midnight, and they were returning from the hospital where Emma had received her weekly treatment. Leukemia. The word still felt like a knife twisting in his gut every time he thought it. Marcus had been a single father for 3 years now, ever since his wife Sarah had walked out, unable to handle the pressure of their daughter's diagnosis. He couldn't blame her entirely. Watching your child fight for her life was a special kind of hell, but he had stayed. He would always stay. Emma was his whole world, his reason for waking up every morning, his purpose for drawing every breath. The headlights caught something unusual ahead. At first, Marcus thought it was a deer, but as he slowed down, his heart lurched. It was a person, sprawled across the shoulder of the road, partially in a ditch. He could see the reflective stripes on what looked like a uniform. "Please, not tonight," he whispered, glancing back at Emma's sleeping form. But even as the words left his lips, he was already pulling over. His father had been a firefighter, and the lesson had been drilled into him since childhood: you never drive past someone who needs help. Never. Marcus threw the car into park and grabbed the emergency flashlight from his glove compartment. The rain soaked through his jacket within seconds as he ran toward the figure. When he got closer, his stomach dropped. It was a police officer, a woman, probably in her early 30s, her blonde hair matted with blood and rain. Her police radio crackled weakly at her shoulder, and he could see the twisted wreckage of a motorcycle about 20 feet away, barely visible in the darkness. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, his hands shaking as he checked for a pulse. It was there, but weak and thready. Her breathing was shallow, labored. Blood seeped from a gash on her head, and her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with pain. My son," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Call Daniel. Tell him." "Don't try to talk," Marcus said, already pulling out his phone. No signal. Of course there wasn't. This stretch of Route 47 was notorious for dead zones. "I'm going to get you help. Just hold on." He ran back to his car, his mind racing. Emma stirred as he yanked open the door. "Daddy, it's okay, sweetheart. There's someone who needs our help. I need you to be brave for me, okay?" Emma nodded, her small face serious beyond her years. Illness had taught her about bravery long before any child should have to learn. Marcus grabbed the blankets they kept for Emma's hospital visits, his first aid kit, and the pillow from the backseat. When he returned to the officer, her eyes had closed again. He carefully placed the pillow under her head and covered her with the blankets, trying to preserve her body heat. The first aid kit seemed pitifully inadequate for injuries this severe, but he used gauze to apply pressure to the head wound. "Stay with me," he pleaded. "What's your name, officer?" "Sarah Brennan," she managed, each word a struggle. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah, like his ex-wife. But this Sarah was fighting to stay alive, fighting to get back to her son. "Okay, Sarah, I'm Marcus. I'm going to stay right here with you. You're not alone." Her hand reached out weakly, and he grasped it. Her fingers were ice cold. "Daniel, he's 12, needs me. His dad died last year. I'm all he has left." Tears mixed with rain on Marcus's face. He understood that fear, that desperate need to survive for your child. "You're going to see him again. I promise you're going to see him again." For the next 20 minutes, Marcus stayed beside Officer Brennan, talking to her constantly, refusing to let her slip away. He told her about Emma, about her treatments, about how brave she was. He told Sarah about Daniel, making her talk about him, keeping her conscious. She managed to smile when she described his love of baseball, how he wanted to be a pitcher someday. Finally, headlights appeared in the distance. Marcus jumped up, waving his flashlight frantically. The semi-truck stopped, and the driver immediately called 911. Within minutes, the wail of sirens filled the night air. The paramedics worked with practiced efficiency. As they loaded Sarah into the ambulance, her eyes found Marcus one last time. "Thank you," she mouthed. "See you soon," he called back, not knowing if he ever would. A police sergeant approached Marcus, taking his statement. "You saved her life," he said simply. "Another 10 minutes in this cold and rain, with those injuries, she wouldn't have made it." Marcus just nodded, suddenly exhausted. He walked back to his car where Emma was waiting, wrapped in his jacket. "Is the police lady going to be okay, Daddy?" "I think so, baby. I really think so." They drove home in silence, but Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Sarah Brennan and her son Daniel, waiting at home, not knowing his mother was fighting for her life. 3 days passed. Marcus went through the motions, taking Emma to school, working his shifts at the warehouse, picking Emma up, making dinner, helping with homework. But Sarah's face haunted him. He had called the hospital twice, but they wouldn't release information to non-family members. On the 4th day, Marcus was loading groceries into his car when a police cruiser pulled up beside him. A tall sergeant with kind eyes stepped out. Marcus Chen. Marcus's heart skipped. Yes, I'm Sergeant Mike Torres. I wanted to personally thank you for what you did for Officer Brennan. She's going to make a full recovery, largely because of your quick action. The relief that flooded through Marcus nearly buckled his knees. She's okay. She's really okay. Broken leg, concussion, some internal bruising, but she'll be back on duty in a few months. She's been asking about you. Would you be willing to visit her? Marcus found himself nodding before the sergeant even finished speaking. The next afternoon, Marcus stood outside Sarah Brennan's hospital room, suddenly nervous. What did you say to someone whose life you'd saved? He knocked softly. Come in, a voice called. Sarah was sitting up in bed, her leg in a cast, a bandage wrapped around her head, but her eyes were clear and alert. Next to her bed sat a boy, Daniel, obviously, with his mother's blonde hair and a baseball glove in his lap. Marcus, Sarah said, her voice breaking. You came. Of course. Marcus stepped into the room, feeling awkward. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, but alive. So alive. She reached for Daniel's hand. This is my son, Daniel. Daniel, this is Marcus Chen, the man who saved my life. Daniel stood up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. For a moment, Marcus thought the boy might speak, but instead, Daniel crossed the room and wrapped his arms around Marcus in a fierce hug. The boy's shoulders shook with silent sobs. Marcus held him, this child he'd never met, and felt his own eyes burning. He understood this grief, this relief, this overwhelming gratitude that a parent had been spared. He'd felt it every time Emma's test results came back with good news. Thank you, Daniel finally whispered. Thank you for bringing her back to me. Sarah was crying now too. They told me you have a daughter. Emma, that she's sick. Marcus nodded, still holding Daniel. Leukemia. She's a fighter though. I want to meet her, Sarah said. I want to thank her too, for sharing her father that night. And so began an unexpected friendship. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Emma visited Sarah regularly. The two became close, bonding over their shared understanding of fear and hope, of single parenthood and the fierce love that comes with it. Emma and Daniel, despite the age difference, formed their own connection. She admired his baseball skills. He was gentle and patient with her in ways that showed wisdom beyond his years. When Sarah was released from the hospital, she invited Marcus and Emma to her home for dinner. It was modest but warm, filled with photos of Daniel and his late father. Over spaghetti and meatballs, they talked and laughed like old friends. Daniel showed Emma his baseball card collection, and for a few hours, the weight of illness and trauma lifted. I've been thinking, Sarah said as she and Marcus cleaned up the kitchen while the kids played in the living room. About that night, about how you stopped. Do you know how many cars passed me before you? My dash cam caught it. 14 vehicles. 14 people who saw me and kept driving. Marcus felt a chill. I almost didn't stop. I was exhausted, worried about Emma, wanted to get home. But my dad always said that you never drive past someone who needs help, Sarah finished, smiling. Your dad was a wise man. That principle, that simple human decency, is the difference between me being here with my son and Daniel being an orphan. Do you understand that? You gave him his mother back. Marcus had to look away, overwhelmed. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. 14 people didn't. You did. She placed a hand on his arm. I'm a cop, Marcus. I've seen the worst of humanity. I've seen what people do to each other. But I've also seen the best, and that night, in the rain, when you could have kept driving, when you had every excuse to think about your daughter first, you stopped. That matters. That means everything. 2 months later, on a crisp Saturday morning, Marcus received a call from Sergeant Torres. We're having a commendation ceremony at the station this afternoon. For you. The chief wants to present you with the Citizens Medal of Valor. Can you make it? Marcus tried to protest. He hadn't done anything special, just what any decent person would do, but Torres was insistent. At 2 o'clock, Marcus walked into the police station with Emma holding his hand, both of them dressed in their best clothes. His heart nearly stopped when he saw the gathering. The entire police force was there, at least 50 officers in dress uniforms, standing at attention. Sarah stood at the front with Sergeant Torres and the police chief, her legs still in a walking boot but her posture proud and strong. Daniel stood beside her in a suit, grinning. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chief Martinez began, her voice carrying across the room. "We are here today to honor a true hero. Marcus Chen is not a police officer. He's not a firefighter or a paramedic. He's a warehouse worker and a single father. But on the night of October 15th, he exemplified the highest ideals of human kindness and courage." As the chief recounted the events of that rainy night, Marcus felt Emma squeeze his hand. He looked down at her, his brave little girl who fought her own battle every day, and suddenly understood something profound. We all save each other. Every act of kindness, every moment of compassion, every time we choose to stop when we could keep driving, we save each other. The chief called Marcus forward, and as he walked through the rows of officers, they began to applaud. It started slowly, then built to a thunderous wave of sound. Officers were wiping their eyes, saluting him. When he reached the front, Chief Martinez pinned the medal to his jacket. "This medal represents the best of what humanity can be," she said. "Officer Brennan is alive because you chose compassion over convenience, because you chose to be your brother's keeper. In a world that often feels dark, you were a light." But the ceremony wasn't over. Sarah stepped forward, and the room fell silent. "Marcus Chen gave me my life back," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "And I realized I wanted to give something back. I've spent the last 2 months organizing this." She nodded to Sergeant Torres, who wheeled in a large presentation board covered with a cloth. When he pulled the cloth away, Marcus's breath caught in his throat. It was a collage of photos, news clippings, and at the center, a large check made out to Children's Hospital in Emma's name. "The entire police force, the community, local businesses, we all came together," Sarah continued. "We've raised $50,000 for Emma's medical treatment and for other children fighting cancer at the hospital. But more than that," she gestured to another officer who stepped forward with papers. "We've established the Emma Chen Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Research. Your daughter's bravery, your family's struggle, it matters. We want to help find a cure." Marcus couldn't speak, he couldn't breathe. Emma tugged at his hand, confused by all the attention, not fully understanding what it meant. He picked her up, holding her close as tears streamed down his face. "You saved my life," Sarah said softly, stepping closer. "Let us help save hers." The room erupted in applause again, but Marcus barely heard it. He was looking at his daughter, at this beautiful, brave little girl who had taught him more about courage than he'd ever taught her. And he was looking at Sarah, at Daniel, at all these strangers who had become family, all because he'd chosen to stop on a dark, rainy night. In the weeks and months that followed, Emma's treatment became easier. The financial burden that had been crushing Marcus lifted. The foundation grew, raising awareness and funds, giving hope to families who were fighting the same battle. Sarah returned to duty, and she and Marcus remained close friends, their children inseparable. On the 1-year anniversary of that fateful night, Marcus and Emma met Sarah and Daniel at the spot where it had all happened. They'd brought flowers, sunflowers, Sarah's favorite. As they stood there together, the 4 of them, Marcus thought about those 14 cars that had passed by, those 14 people who had kept driving. He didn't judge them. Life was complicated, and everyone had their reasons, their fears, their emergencies. But he was grateful that his father had raised him to stop, grateful that he'd listened to that voice inside that said this matters, grateful for every choice that had led him to this moment. "You know what I've learned," Sarah said, breaking the comfortable silence. "There are angels all around us. Not the kind with wings and halos, but ordinary people who make extraordinary choices. People who stop when they could keep driving. People who give when they could take. People who love when it would be easier to walk away." She looked at Marcus, then at Emma, then at Daniel. "We save each other. That's what people do. That's what makes us human." Emma, whose hair had started growing back after her latest round of treatment, looked up at her father. "Daddy, am I going to be okay?" Marcus knelt down, taking her small face in his hands. A year ago, that question would have filled him with terror. But now, surrounded by this unlikely family born from a rainy night and a split-second decision, he felt something different. Hope. "Yes, baby, you're going to be okay. We all are." Because we have each other, and we never stop fighting, and we never drive past someone who needs help. That's the deal. Emma smiled and wrapped her arms around his neck. Over her shoulder, Marcus caught Sarah's eye. She was crying again, happy tears this time, and she mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." But Marcus shook his head. "Thank you," he mouthed back. Because Sarah had taught him something profound that night: we're never alone. In our darkest moments, when we're bleeding in the rain on the side of the road, when we're fighting for our children's lives, when we're struggling just to get through another day, we're never alone. Somewhere, someone is stopping. Somewhere, someone is choosing compassion. Somewhere, someone is being an angel without wings. As the sun set on that country road, 4 people stood together, 2 single parents and 2 children, bound by trauma and triumph, by loss and love, by the simple human truth that we are all we have. And sometimes, that's everything. Marcus Chen had thought he was just stopping to help a dying cop. He didn't know he was saving a friend, building a family, creating a legacy of kindness that would ripple outward, touching countless lives. He didn't know that 14 months later, Emma would be declared cancer-free, or that Daniel would pitch a perfect game and dedicate it to the man who brought his mother home, or that the Emma Chen Foundation would fund the research that led to a breakthrough in pediatric leukemia treatment. He just knew that when you see someone who needs help, you stop. You always stop, because that's what people do. That's what love looks like. And in a world that can feel cold and dark, that's everything. The 4 of them stood together as night fell, not as strangers or even just friends, but as family, the family we choose, the family we save, the family we become when we're brave enough to stop on a dark road and say, "You're not alone." And that, in the end, is the only story that matters.